Plunderer is about a continent floating in the sky where all of the people on there have numbers written on their body that increase when they perform a certain action and decrease when they do the opposite of that action. If that sounds like an interesting concept, don't worry, the show does nothing with it. It is also about a young woman whose mother was sucked down into the abyss, which is what happens when your count reaches 0, and given a sphere with, I think, the number 10,000 on it, for some reason, to bring to a member of the Legendary Aces, which is a group of heroes that helped save the continent 300 years ago. Needless to say, she finds one in basically the first episode, and the basic idea is to uncover the mysteries, honestly, of the continent, and what specifically are the Legendary Aces and the hidden history of the continent. Also, the entire time, the Legendary Ace she finds tries to run away from her. Now, I can't get too much further into the plot, and I really wouldn't want to. One, because the anime is relatively new enough. This is a 2020 anime. And two, because the show has a plot twist every episode. So basically, they just uncover a 300-year-old conspiracy. And I think it's fairly safe to say that pretty much all of your questions are going to be answered by the end of it. Although it does end without resolving the overarching plot, but that's okay. I wouldn't want it to continue in the first place. It's fucking terrible. Now, when I say it's terrible, I almost couldn't make it through the first episode. Like, I had to pause midway through the first episode and was like, oh my god, this is nightmarish. I am in hell. And I looked around and read some comments and read some forums, and the general consensus was, yeah, it starts bad, but it gets way better as it continues. And let me just tell you, that is true in the same way that wet dog shit turns into dried dog shit over time. There are literally too many problems for me to talk about in a concise review. Like, if I were to go over every individual issue I had with Plunderer, this review would be like 30 minutes long. So I'm going to give a real Cliff Notes version. Oh, let's talk about the things I like real quick and get it out. There is a guy named Gale or Jail or something in this. I don't fucking fully care. He's like an enemy officer of the military. He's pretty cool. And one of the girls named Lynn is like this bright, happy, always trying to do her best soldier girl as well, who only tangentially has a relationship with the aforementioned character. Also, during a time travel sequence, we're introduced to the school bully, who, based on the quality of writing in the rest of the show, which is, again, complete dog shit, you would assume that he is just going to be just an evil dude all the way through, but he actually ends up becoming a sort of likable character. He's not a good guy. He's still awful, but he's kind of awful for an interesting reason. Like, he's kind of doing it to help people. So he ended up becoming one of the more interesting, honestly, only complex character, I would say, throughout the entire show. Genuinely surprised that weird goat-eyed bully came out to be a good thing. Anyway, everything else is terrible. So, like I said, there's a plot twist about every episode. None of these plot twists are actually interesting, but I guess I should probably mention that it wouldn't stop doing that. There's a heavy amount of fan service in Plunderer, and it is just done so poorly. Like, it's not done in, like, candid, voyeuristic shots or anything like you see in a lot of anime. It is done almost exclusively through sexual assault, and I would say the bulk of it is perpetrated by the main character. Now, of course, I have nothing against portraying sexual assault in media, but the problem is twofold. One, it's supposed to titillate, so you're kind of hitting a narrower strike window in that regard in the first place, but also two, it's being done by the main character. So this means that we have to spend the entire series with a character who's routinely sexually assaulting women. And when I'm being very clear about this, like, there is a scene where the main heroine is screaming no as the main character is trying to force her legs apart to look at her panties. Like, there is no redeeming him as a character, and that's not even getting into the mass murder thing. Because frankly, we deal with mass murders all the time in anime. I'm more concerned about the fact that he just sexually assaults characters on screen constantly. But that's the main characters. The villains are a major issue, and this is probably the most eye-rolling part. They are just, with the exclusion of the bully character I just mentioned, who has some hidden complexities to them, they are just all pure evil. There's also a brief scene with some enemy soldiers where you find out they're doing it for the family, but that scene is completely undermined by the previous scene where they were just shown to be pure evil. Like, all of the villains in the show are just like, I'm evil, ha ha ha, and then they laugh and they smile and they, like, gleefully cheer as they kill people. It's boring, it's stupid, it's awful. This is also an action scene where the general idea of it that they tell you in the beginning is whatever your number is, that's how strong you are in combat. Clearly doesn't work like that. That gets undermined immediately, but it also leads to some of the most boring fight scenes you've ever seen. Plunderer is a series with terrible characters, terrible villains, terrible writing, terrible action scenes. It genuinely has nothing redeeming about it. There are 2 halfway decent episodes, 1 episode where they decide to cook to make the main character feel better, and then there's a secondary episode where they all just get drunk, and there's an implication that the main heroine is turning into an alcoholic. They also, towards the end, start hooking up the main hero and the main heroine, and she 180s, where she becomes the sexually aggressive one, constantly trying to have babies with him. I guess it's worth a chuckle or two, but Plunderer is absolutely irredeemable. For the love of God, don't watch it. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic. Your Envoy of Hope. Bye-bye.